Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and petrol heads all around the world, welcome to episode 6 of F1 Radio. F1 Radio is your dedicated source of anything and everything you need to know in the world of Formula 1. We bring you all the latest paddock gossip and racing rumours, as well as reviewing Grand Prix events and answering your questions in the listeners' Q&A segment. Come rain or shine, F1 Radio is your dedicated Formula 1 podcast, airing on every Grand Prix week on podcast services across the internet for your amusement. If you like what you hear, follow us on Twitter @_F1 Radio to let us know what you think and to send your F1 related questions that, if you are lucky enough, we will answer in a future episode. I'm your host, Tom Fenton, and as always, joining me today is the editor-in-chief of ReadMotorsport.com and Autosport Junior, Josh Attil.
Yes, hello everyone and welcome to episode 6 now of F1 Radio.
If you didn't already know, every F1 Radio episode is split into 3 juicy segments to ensure every wheel nut is tightened correctly before the episode leaves the pit box and into your various devices. Let's start off with what is and forever will be the Weekly Watch. In today's episode, we have 2 news items to discuss in the world of Formula 1. So Josh, let's begin with the first news item, and that is about engines. The 2021 engine regulations have just been announced by the FIA, Formula 1, Liberty, and basically not a lot is changing as such. It's what I predicted really would happen. They're not going out and extremely changing the formula by, for example, introducing a different type of engine such as a V8 that a lot of people suggested may happen, and the hybrid formula will still exist. It's still a hybrid engine. So what do you make of the announcement, Josh? Do you agree with this formula that they are going down on the engines, and would you care to share some of the details with our beloved listeners?
Yeah, well, I'm fairly happy, I think, with the direction they're going in. You know, it seems fairly positive. I think it's good to not have another kind of revolution of the engines not really needed in the current climate of Formula 1. Slightly worrying, but we've got a quote from Toto Wolff. This is from AMS, the brilliant the German F1 site. Follow Toby Gruner on Twitter if you don't already, because he tweets out some great stuff. Anyway, he said, Toto Wolff said, concept sounds similar to current engine, but it requires a completely new development. So a few cost concerns there, but some of the kind of more positive things about this is that we're getting rid of the MGU-H, of course, quite a few problems for Honda with that one. We're getting rid of some of the kind of more difficult parts of the engine to make, those that kind of produced quite a bit of disparity between the engines, and also some poor reliability, of course, namely for Honda and Renault. And we're also getting a more powerful MGU-K, which will mean that we'll get this kind of manual driver deployment in the race. So it adds a bit more of a strategy for the drivers, a bit more power into the driver's hands. It's very similar to the kind of KERS system we had from 2009, of course, and then when that was first introduced, and then of course was kind of axed at the end of 2013 in favour of what we have now. But that seems to be coming back, which I think is a positive thing. It's a bit of a kind of push-to-pass system, which I think we've been kind of asking for a while. And then that will hopefully mean we can get id of DRS as well, of course, which is not too popular with fans, I think it's fair to say. And there are also a number of kind of other, single turbo with dimensional constraints and weight limits. We've got standard energy store and control electronics, so a bit of standardising of parts as well, which I think is always great. In an effort to kind of limit costs, we've also got higher engine running speed range to improve the sound of the engines. So we're sticking with these V6 turbo hybrids, of course 1.6 litre. So as Tom said, pretty similar to what we have now, but they should be a little bit louder, hopefully a bit more reliable, and most importantly, they should be cheaper, and there should be less difference between the engines.
Yeah, I think you covered all the bases there. I think, like you mentioned, it is better to have a evolution than a reinvention of a current or a new type of engine, and that's what we're having here. We're not scrapping what a lot of manufacturers have spent, multi-millions on producing these incredibly complex engines that we currently have in the cars. And like Josh said, they're running at now 3,000 RPM, or they will be That's the aim, at least, to improve the sound. Now, that does mean they will be louder, but I think the tone of the engines will still be the same. So it's not, going to fix the problem of the sound. But, it's better than what we've got. And, I think it's good to evolve and not just completely produce a new scheme or formula, because, like Josh had mentioned off air, if we did that, we could be in a situation like we were in 2014, where one team who has just produced the best engine is completely dominating and has no competition. So it's good to keep the level playing field and not rock the boat too much, because this allows teams like Honda and McLaren, or shall I now say Toro Rosso and potentially Red Bull in 2019, to catch up to a point and
hopefully attract some new manufacturers as well.
Exactly, that's the biggest, I think, underlying fact here that not a lot of people who are maybe more casual fans are concerned about, and that is that more teams and, shall I say, manufacturers like Porsche or Audi, etc., are interested in coming into F1 and producing engines. And I think if the current technology is going to stay around for a long time, that is a good sign for them. And obviously businesses have to assess risks, etc. I don't want to get too economical here, but you don't enter something like Formula One if you know it's going to change in a few years. You wait for that next generation. So, yep, overall 2021 engines, I think, Josh, are a step in the right direction.
And they're not bending it as well too much to the manufacturers. I think they made a mistake in the past with doing that. Kind of think, we'll set these engine regulations and this will attract new manufacturers. That's what they kind of tried to do in 2014, and all we got was Honda, so it didn't really work, So they can kind of mistakenly do that, but I think this time they haven't done that. They've just gone for what's best for the sport and the current teams now, which I think is the way to go.
Yeah, I think, like we've said and many people say in the world in Formula One, is that if you improve the racing, everybody else will come. People will watch if it's fun. People will partake, and engine manufacturers, car companies will be involved if it's interesting. So that is the main goal. I think, yes, it's good for them not to bend their rules and let companies have their way. And I think the only concern now is, like we've said offline, Josh, is just the car's aero packages. But that's a story for another day. So overall, guys, we think the engine regulations for 2021 are cool. Let us know. Send us any comments and thoughts on this on Twitter @_F1 Radio to let us know what you think and maybe what you would do if you were in charge of the 2021 engine regulations. So, Josh, our next news item technically isn't news in the sense that we carry news on this show, but anyway, it's something that we wanted to talk about and we felt like this was the best place to put it. So let the listeners know what this is all about.
Yeah, so this is, of course, Lewis Hamilton winning his 4th Formula 1 World Championship, surpassing Ayrton Senna, of course, and drawing level with Alain Prost. And, of course, now just behind Fangio and, of course, Schumacher. His kind of 7 titles looking a little bit closer now for Hamilton. So, of course, this is his 3rd title in 4 years. It's his, of course, 3rd one as well with the Mercedes team. And, he's kind of wrapped it up, I think, a little sooner than most people are expecting. Certainly at kind of the midpoint way in the season. So, Tom, how have you reflected on Hamilton's, clinching of this 4th World Championship and this season in general? Where do you think it ranks among his kind of 4 title victories?
I think this is probably his best. Usually we see Hamilton, I don't obviously know the guy, but I don't think he's the most mentally strong driver out there. And that's why he sometimes makes very stupid mistakes, but we haven't seen that this season that I can think of anyway. So this has been a very consistent drive, and like everybody knows, it's finishing first is not the important thing. It's finishing. That's the most important part. And being consistent is how you win a championship. And that's what he's done this season. I think it is probably his best season that he's won the title. I can't think of another season where he's probably drove better. 2008, he probably didn't deserve the title, but he won it. 2014, he did. 2015, he definitely did. But I think 2017, because it was a fight with another team that he had basically no control of. Mercedes could have orchestrated their last 3 championship wins because they don't have competition, really, apart from it being inside the team. So the fact that he had to battle another team to win this is more impressive. And I don't think he made too many mistakes. He did what he had to do. And so I think he's done very well this season. What do you make of it?
Well, not a single standout mistake for me in terms of a big mistake this year. You look at Vettel and, you could kind of point to Baku, point to Singapore. And that's kind of, I think, the difference between them this year. I mean, of course, Vettel's had the worst reliability in that, but I think, Hamilton very much deserves to win this title. Vettel would have, of course, been a worthy champion as well, but I don't think there'd be too many complaints about, Hamilton winning this championship because he's been in such fine form really all year, particularly this kind of second half of the year. This has really been kind of peak Lewis Hamilton, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the way he's kind of, leading the team as well in much more kind of mature way than I think we've seen previously. I kind of feel, kind of 2016, he didn't seem, too kind of connected to the team. It was very kind of divided between him and Rosberg, and it wasn't really putting the team, kind of their kind of interests at first, first. But it's been very different this year. He seems to have led that team very well. He's, of course, been a team leader compared to Valtteri Bottas. He's enjoyed having Bottas alongside him. He's played the team game as well. He hasn't really been selfish or kind of, completely kind of shunning out Bottas this year. We saw in Hungary, but Hamilton, stuck true to his word and let Bottas back through. I think it's been a very mature season for Hamilton. It's very easy to criticise him and, criticise his attitude, but I think, kind of on track he's performed very, very well and has led Mercedes, of course, to a fourth Constructors' title and his fourth Drivers' title as well. So, Tom, the question is, of course, we can't avoid, is where do you think he kind of ranks among the greats, both in terms of kind of great British drivers and great drivers in general?
Well, I was just about to ask you the exact same question, so I'm glad you asked it. And so technically, or statistically, should I say, he has the most wins, the most poles, and the most championships that a British driver has ever had. So on paper, he is the best British driver ever. I haven't seen every British driver race, so I can't comment that he definitely is. But from the drivers I've seen, I'd probably say overall he is the best that I've seen. Maybe not the best in every department. I mean, definitely not the best in every department, but overall, he is probably the best British driver that I have seen. In terms of the greats, it's difficult. Again, I haven't seen all of them. I don't think he's close to Schumacher yet. I don't think anybody is just yet. And it's like I was saying offline, you can have all the belts or shall I say victories and the championships, but it doesn't really mean anything. Alonso for the last 5 or so years hasn't won a race, but does it really matter? He's still considered one of the best drivers on the grid, and people who were around at that time will know that. So I'm not trying to take anything away. I do think you have to be a good driver to win, to be on pole, and there's no question he's one of the best qualifiers of all time. So he's definitely better than Schumacher in that respect, and he's probably better than Senna in that respect. It's difficult to say, but in terms of the complete package, I still think he's behind a few guys, and it's what you like, isn't it? Hamilton is a guy who's very aggressive, and sometimes that doesn't always pay off. But recently, it has been paying off in terms of the way he drives, and he's been making a lot less mistakes. So he's maturing, he's improving. I don't know, where he really ranks. I'm not going to lie. Where do you put him, Josh?
Well, my opinion kind of changes, I think, quite a lot really with this one, because I think at the end of the day, there is no right or wrong answer really with this one. You can kind of make the case for, a number of kind of different drivers for being the best. In terms of this kind of generation, I think you've got Hamilton, Vettel, Alonso, many will kind of point to as the kind of best three from the kind of past 10 years, kind of in the post-Schumacher era. And really, I think the three of them are really interchangeable, to be honest. But I would probably put Hamilton as the best of those three after this kind of, spectacular year that he's had. At times, say, after 2011 or kind of, around there, I certainly wouldn't have put him, probably above Vettel or Alonso. But, the way he's kind of carried himself since he joined Mercedes has just been so impressive. This year has been the kind of peak of that. And to come back after what was, a disappointing 2016 and kind of really annihilate the field, especially in the second half of the year, has been very, very impressive. And if he can kind of continue to do this, he's 29 wins behind, Schumacher on the all-time wins list, so it's got quite a lot of, to go. But really, it's not out of the question that we could see him, taking that, kind of a record off Schumacher. So, it's very, very tough to say. I'd say he is, at the moment, edging just ahead of Vettel and Alonso, but it's so very close. And in terms of the all-time greats, yeah, I think it would be. I can't put him as the greatest of all time, but he's definitely in that conversation, and he's definitely probably in the kind of top 5, at least top 10 at the very least. So the important thing is, I think regardless of where you put him, I think we just have to admit that we are witnessing, one of the greatest Formula 1 drivers of all time, and not only Hamilton, but also kind of Vettel, Alonso, and the rise of some future ones, of course, like Max Verstappen, who of course won this race, and we'll talk about him a little bit later on. But the future's very bright, and we can have this kind of debate all kind of along the winter, really, and over the coming few years. It's a never-ending really debate, is it, Tom?
No, not at all. It's for Hamilton and like Vettel, and probably the same with Alonso. It's going to be something that time will tell how great they really were. So when Vettel retires, when Hamilton retires, and they're like 50 odd, whatever, then we'll see what their legacy is. Will the kids in F1 remember them? Will they still look back and say they were the great guys? Because a lot of our generation look to the Schumachers, look to Hakkinen, and like the drivers in the 90s, and even some do look towards Ayrton Senna, but I'm too young for that. So it'll be interesting to see. I have no doubt Hamilton will be in that conversation, and he's got a few years left in F1. I don't think he's going to be going on past 35, to be honest. So maybe 3 or 4 more seasons. He's got time. He can beat Schumacher's win record. There's no question about it. So we'll see. So statistically, he could be one of the best, and he already is. But will he be the best? Who knows? But anyway, Josh, that is the end of the news section for this episode of F1 Radio. So that means it is time for Racing Report.
Today's Racing Report is, of course, the 2017 Mexican Grand Prix, the 18th round of the 2017 Formula 1 season, and it was won by Max Verstappen, his 3rd career win, of course, from 2nd on the grid. It was a fantastic qualifying session and really fantastic weekend all round in terms of just how close the top 3 teams were. Red Bull have really made strides over this season, and this could, of course, be seen this weekend. Hamilton was fastest in Q1, Verstappen fastest in Q2, but it was Sebastian Vettel who took pole position on Saturday in Q3. Verstappen was 2nd, and Hamilton was, of course, down in 3rd, nearly half a second off Vettel. But, of course, Hamilton only needed a 5th on Sunday, so it should have been nice and easy on Sunday, Tom, surely. But it didn't actually work out that way. Contact, of course, left both Hamilton and Vettel at the back. They were last and second last, I'm pretty sure, after lap 2, which was certainly quite the sight. But they managed to get up to 4th and 9th, respectively. So, of course, the race results then at the end of the day was Max Verstappen, of course, won the race, when it was Valtteri Bottas in 2nd, Raikkonen 3rd, then Vettel, then it was Esteban Ocon with a brilliant 5th position for Force India. They sealed 4th in the Constructors. Lance Stroll, another excellent performance from him, out of kind of really nowhere, in 6th place, then it was Sergio Perez in 7th, Kevin Magnussen, an excellent P8 for Haas. Hamilton, as I mentioned, was in 9th, ahead of Fernando Alonso, who took the final point for McLaren. Out of the points was Massa, Van Dorn, Gasly, Verlaine and Grosjean. And then we had 5 retirements from a very tough Mexican Grand Prix, very tough on the cars and engines. We had Sainz, Ericsson, Hartley, Hulkenberg and Daniel Ricciardo retiring from the race. So then, Tom, let's cut straight to the kind of main talking point of this race. And of course, that was that controversial lap 1 contact between Hamilton and Vettel. How did you read that one?
Well, like I said last week about the Austin Grand Prix, if I was in Vettel's shoes, I would not avoid making contact with Hamilton. And I know people have said to me that this is a very bad way to look at racing, but I don't care who you are. If you're in his shoes, you would do the same thing. I'm not saying you deliberately crash into Hamilton, but I'm saying you don't avoid crashing. Now, I know people have said for this incident, obviously, they were going through that little S section, the chicane, and Vettel, he was turning, I think, quite a lot. I don't think he intended to make contact, or even, I don't think he was looking to try and ruin Hamilton's race. I think it was just a pure racing incident because of the speed they were going, and it's very difficult to think that quickly. And obviously just the way the corner was. So I think it was a fair contact. It was just a racing incident. Nobody was to blame. Hamilton was trying to make the most of Vettel's compromised entry to the corner, and obviously he didn't want Verstappen to get too far ahead because I think he had plans to, like any person would, you want to win the championship by winning the race, and that was one of the only ways to catch the Red Bulls, because as we know in qualifying and during the race, 3 teams were capable of winning this race on pure merit and speed, and that's one of the takeaways I have from this race. But yeah, overall I would say Vettel didn't make he was innocent, I would say, and people have said to me that he had more to lose, obviously his wing, than Hamilton potentially getting a puncture. What do you think about it, Josh?
Yeah, a racing incident, really, for me. I'm not even going to kind of explain my reasoning, but yeah, for me, every day of the week, that was a racing incident. Some people trying to suggest differently on Twitter. Look at these hand movements with some, screenshot or whatever, but, we've seen that before. But yeah, we were robbed, though, again, of a three-way fight, similar to kind of Singapore, which was a shame, Tom. We're kind of yet to really see that this year. I mean, we could have had a really nice kind of four-way fight, but I guess wasn't to be.
Yeah, the only time that we've actually had Hamilton and Vettel fighting for a win was in Austin, and Vettel didn't make the most of that situation. But yeah, like you said, yet again, Formula One, they always seem to find a way to ruin the moment. Whatever it is, if it's, the qualifying went really strange and, you had Mercedes and Ferraris at the back of the grid, it would end up not being as exciting as it should be. And yeah, that's exactly like Singapore.
Austin in Spain, pretty much. The only times I think we've seen Hamilton and Vettel
that's
really
true.
go at it, and this race, I guess, for a brief few seconds. But let's talk about their comebacks then, respectively. Vettel up to 4th, Hamilton up to 9th. Hamilton struggled a lot, didn't he, in those early stages, and that really kind of compromised him later on.
So I think Hamilton had more damage to his car than just obviously the tyre. Obviously, that's around the diffuser of the car, so that's going to have an impact on performance. And at a track like Mexico, where there's not a lot of grip, it's not so beneficial. Obviously, Mercedes has a great car, and he didn't lose too much performance, but as we saw at the beginning of the race, he was really struggling to get past a Renault, and the Renault have a good engine.
Well,
yeah, the Sauber too.
Yeah.
But Mercedes have got a very good engine, and at a track like at Mexico, they really should be breezing past people. And he did once he switched to the super soft tyres, but initially he was struggling, and there was talks that Mercedes were just saving their engine because they know they didn't need to actually score anything. And it turned out that he didn't have to anyway, because Vettel only finished in 4th place. But Hamilton, I think, had probably his worst race of the season, one of his worst races in the last few years. He didn't, obviously, yep, he had an issue at the start, but usually in that sort of car, he would come back through the field. He didn't really do too well, and but it doesn't matter. He won the championship. It didn't make a difference. He's already done the hard work. Vettel, on the other hand, yet again, another example this year, along with Canada and maybe Japan. I don't know. Oh no, Japan, he didn't finish, did he? But I think there's been another time this season where he's come back through the field, finished strongly, and shown that for somebody who used to have a reputation of being a poor passer of somebody and not being able to race, he's proving that he's one of the best drivers when it comes to overtaking people and getting through the field, and he did very well. And I think what was very clear is that Ferrari have, although maybe they don't have the fastest car, their car can run behind these other cars very comfortably.
A lot better than the Mercedes, yeah.
It was obvious. I think even if you're not a massive fan of Formula One, you could see that pretty much everybody but Ferrari was having to pull out of the tow very often, and Vettel could follow other cars and he was fine. And that is something that really does bode into next year in terms of coolant of the car, and because obviously the cars aren't changing a lot. But yeah, I think to just summarise, I think they both had, or one had a very great race, but obviously resulted in nothing and him losing the championship. But on the other hand, Hamilton, I don't think drove up really well at all, and probably was a bit miffed by Vettel, but it was enough. What more can you ask? But I think what we do have to mention in the racing is that obviously Vettel had had some good overtakes, but there's nothing better than the Hamilton versus Alonso fight towards the end of the race. Now, before I let you describe this, Josh, I just want to say this. I believe Alonso made a huge deal about this because he knew that if Hamilton got past, then Vettel would have to win the race, and he didn't want to let Hamilton overtake him to win the championship. That's what I believe. I made such a big deal, and showing the world that he may be winning the championship, but is he the best driver?
Yeah, well, it was a lot of mind games, wasn't it, from Alonso? Like you said, he didn't know that everyone was watching. He'd know the cameras were on him, and he'd know that this kind of moment will be replayed for probably many races and many years to come, really. And the kind of montages of kind of Hamilton wrapping up his championships, they'll probably show this battle of Alonso, kind of in future. It really was a great fight towards the end of the race, and it's really one you need to track down and watch if you somehow missed the race. It was pretty spectacular. And just a really nice moment, really, because we've seen quite a lot this year. McLaren, of course, just kind of been breezed past. It's almost kind of really very, very depressing. But Alonso, really stepped it up. Showed, like you said, he's one of the best races. And ultimately, I think the lasting kind of taste from this race for many fans was the excitement. Heading into 2018, we had a great fight at the front between these top three teams. And if we had these kind of similar level of car performance, going into next year for at least the top three teams, then we'd have a really close, three-way fight for the championship in terms of the constructors, and arguably a kind of four, maybe even five-way fight for the drivers. But you also got to throw in, McLaren, possibly even Renault in there as well next year, and we got a nice flavour of what Alonso, could be doing next year. There's kind of fantastic fights between Hamilton and Alonso, but we could be getting on a regular basis next year. Throw in Verstappen, Vettel, Ricciardo as well, and you've got a really nice 2018. In theory, we'll have to see how it plays out. There's been a lot of optimism before. Especially regarding McLaren, but plenty of fresh optimism, Tom, after this weekend.
Yeah, like I said at the top of the report, there was three teams that were capable of winning that race on pure merit, and usually in the hybrid era, we've had to rely on Mercedes having a bad day for somebody else to win, up until at least maybe 2015, where Ferrari won a few races, but this year it has been more close, and like you said, it would be great if we could have 3 or 4 teams in the mix, especially somebody like Alonso that a lot of people would love to see on the podium again, at least once or twice next year, to know that they're going in the right direction, because you do feel that Alonso would quit if next year wasn't any good, because
podium's a minimum, right? Yeah,
that's what I mean. He needs to see the encouragement, because if they haven't, then I don't think he's interested anymore. He's shown a lot of signs to go elsewhere, and he keeps going on about, I don't want to be the best F1 driver, I want to be the most complete driver across any discipline, and that means he's looking elsewhere. So yeah, that's talk for 2018. We'll cover this in the post-season. Let's get back to the race, Joss, and let's talk about the lesser points paying positions, and the reason we're talking about this is because it's very crucial. So 5th, 6th and 7th was interesting, because Force India in 5th and 7th respectively have now sealed 4th place in the Drivers' Championship. They cannot be caught by anybody else, and also in 6th place Lance Stroll doing a great race, maybe not mathematically but in reality securing that 5th place for Williams.
Yeah, Lance Stroll, of course, coming home in 6th place. I mean, he's been obliterated really by Massa in qualifying, but then on kind of Sundays, he's just done an excellent job, really, on a couple of occasions, and he's actually outpointing Massa. I mean, who would have thought that, Tom, at the start of the year?
Yeah, I think Lance Stroll had a lot of questions. He has clearly in the past had great race results, but that doesn't mean anything when you step up into Formula 1, and you've really got to deliver, and he's done that, and I think he's earned his place. So yeah, a good day for Williams, a good day for Force India, arguably the best team in terms of bang for buck. And I guess talking about the positives for Williams is that actually Renault had a really poor day. They had the car to be in the top 10, and considering, the Ferraris and Mercedes having a few issues, and Red Bull as well, there was potentially a top 5 finish in there for one of the Renaults, at least Hülkenberg running in 4th for a very long time. So, Josh, you think that this has guaranteed them to, unfortunately not be able to catch Williams for them, but if we think about it, it doesn't really matter, because next year you'd like to think that they would probably be ahead of Williams anyway.
For sure, but it's still pretty embarrassing, already, in my opinion, the way they've kind of very much under-delivered this year. Of course, you can portion a big part of the blame onto Jolyon Palmer, but in terms of operationally, Renault have not performed very well at all, in my opinion. The car and the engine itself seemed, fairly decent. It probably is the 5th fastest car, or maybe even 4th fastest car at certain tracks, and they have not optimised that package at all, really, to be pretty blunt with them. And they could really do with some better results really to round out the season. I mean, 2 races left, like you say, and they're only a point ahead of Haas, in the championship, and that'd be embarrassing to be beaten by them for the second year in a row, of course, considering Haas are only in their second year in the sport. Toro Rosso are 5 points ahead, so they're definitely catchable. I really can't see Toro Rosso scoring as well with the way their team is going in terms of reliability. They don't seem to be performing very well either. And really, Force India have completely stolen fourth in the constructors. They have had the 4th fastest car, for sure at certain tracks, but they haven't, consistently had that kind of, pace advantage over Williams and Renault and Toro Rosso. Especially in qualifying as well. But in the race, they just seem to turn it round, and they're always up there. 5th and 7th for Ocon and Perez. I mean, really, it probably should have been 5th and 6th without the virtual safety car. They even think they could have got a podium, but I think, as Tom said, kind of off air, that would be a bit ambitious, really. But yeah, great job again from Ocon and Perez. I mean, Ocon, he's a star, definitely in the future. Many people are already linking him to that Mercedes seat, and I think rightly so. But yeah, Force India, 2 solid drivers, and they've stepped it up so much since 2014 new engine regs. They've had Hülkenberg, Ocon and Perez in the car. They're 3 fantastic midfield drivers, and they're really reaping the benefits of picking good drivers based on talent and not money. And they, the other teams surely have no excuse now, because Force India have probably arguably the lowest budget on the grid, possibly apart from Sauber. And, coming home in fourth position is just absolutely fantastic. And surely, Tom, if you're a manufacturer and you're looking to come into the sport, rather than kind of starting out fresh, you could just buy Force India, because they seem to have the perfect kind of business model. Of course, put in a few of your own men and women, but just keep pretty much the same team, because it's working really, really well, and just pump, a lot more money into the team.
Yeah, I do think Force India is a team that will be bought in the future if they consistently deliver like this, which I have been doing for the last few years. I wouldn't be surprised if I saw a manufacturer like Aston Martin buy them. I know they have a deal with Red Bull right now, but I believe if Aston Martin want to come into F1 seriously and they want to take a team over, that would be Red Bull, but I don't think Red Bull would probably want to do that. So Force India is a great option there. Any team in general, obviously, if you have some sort of affiliation with Mercedes, then maybe that would be a good idea to take over Force India, being basically the best Mercedes team apart from Mercedes themselves. So yeah, Force India, like you said, great drivers. Ocon, definitely a star of the future. Perez, a consistent driver, he's great. And unfortunately for him, his Mercedes or McLaren Mercedes drive maybe hadn't helped his career. But either way, they've definitely benefited from, in fact the entire grid has benefited from Renault having a poor day on engines. Only Verstappen was a Renault in the points, and luckily for him, it held out so he could win the race.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's some nervous moments for Christian Horner and for Verstappen in that car, especially when they were saying slow down, Max, slow down, and he goes and sets the fastest lap on the kind of very next lap. That was I think only heightening Horner's blood pressure and everyone else on that pit wall. But yeah, not a good day for Renault. They said they went too aggressive with the kind of engine mapping and engine strategies going into this weekend, and I think that's fair to say that showed with all those failures. Not a good kind of image for Renault, and not a good image for McLaren going into next year. They're ditching Honda, of course, and going with Renault, and I don't think their problems with engines are going to be over at all, really, until they find someone new for 2019 or 2021, probably more likely. So yeah, McLaren, they haven't escaped it yet, and we'll have to see how that Renault engine holds out next year and where they're going on that development. It's going to be an interesting one for sure, but not a good weekend for them. And, just a final point as well on Williams. I mean, Stroll obviously got a great result, and they're 5th in the Constructors, and I think that's a great result for them as well. I mean, to have probably one of the weakest driver lineups on the grid, admittedly, I think, in Massa and Stroll, just with the inexperience of Stroll and the kind of Massa's, definitely past his best. And they're still coming home with 5th place in the Constructors, so really they've been let off the hook massively by Renault, who I think have underperformed more than any other team, in my opinion. But someone performing, I think, above expectations this weekend was Kevin Magnussen, despite feeling ill on Friday and Saturday, and probably on Sunday as well. Tom, he still brought home P8 and, fended off Lewis Hamilton, beat Lewis Hamilton, which is never a bad thing to do.
Yeah, the bad boy in F1 has had a good race, and I think I saw Haas saying that he basically drove perfectly. There was nothing wrong that he did. And everybody knows with Kevin Magnussen that if he just sorted a part of his personality out, I think he'd be a much more attractive driver for teams. I think that's why maybe McLaren ditched him. Maybe, the Renault deal didn't go the way that Renault wanted, because maybe, Magnussen thought he was worth more, or wanted something maybe too extreme. I don't know.
Yeah, for the Renault deal, for sure, he wanted a longer deal, and Renault only would offer him a year deal. He rejected it, went to Haas, and obviously Palmer got the season.
I think, obviously this is going a bit off topic, but in terms of being a driver who wants what you want, I think if you deliver on the track, you get what you want. And if you just deliver, everything will come in the right way. So, yeah, he's had a good race. I hope that maybe this is a good sign for Haas to be a bit more competitive, because they look like Williams, where next year they could be left behind and fighting with the Saubers. So I would like to think that this is a good sign. We all just want close racing, but if we're honest, the Mexican Grand Prix for the 2017 season was actually quite a good race. We had some good overtaking, some nice battles throughout the field. Of course, this was helped a lot by the incident in turn 1, or shall I say turn 3, is it? Something like that. The first lap incident, let's say that. And that made it a little bit more exciting, but overall, it was a great race. Verstappen proving that he is a star of the future, and that Red Bull really are going to be a team to fear for not only the next 2 races in the season, but definitely the 2018 season. So, I don't know, Josh, if you have anything else to say.
No, I'll probably just say maybe 7 out of 10 for this race, or 8 out of 10 maybe. I think I saw a lot of complaints, but I personally enjoyed it. Driver of the day, Max Verstappen, I'd say. Fantastic drive. This is frightening, I think, because I think we're going to see a lot more of these types of wins from him in the future, next year maybe.
Yeah, I agree. I don't understand people complaining about the race. Maybe if you're not a Hamilton fan, then probably you're not going to be overly happy about it, but that doesn't matter. The race was great. It was a good race, and for 2017, when we're not used to having too much overtaking, it was great. So I would definitely give it a 7, maybe an 8. And driver of the day is very difficult, but you see elements of Vettel in Verstappen's performance, definitely, where he just runs away and you never see him on the camera because he's just so comfortable. And like you said, he pumps out the fastest lap, and you knew he was very comfortable. And maybe Bottas and Kimi Raikkonen aren't as technically skilled as Verstappen, but they were in very fast cars and they were nowhere close, as well as the
rest of the field. Basically couldn't really touch him. He probably should have been on pole as well. So
but that was the way it was, and I'd say I enjoyed it. Let us know what you think about the race and the championship on Twitter @_F1 Radio. Please let us know. Also, send us questions, all right? This is very appropriate for the next segment of the show, which, what is that, Josh?
Well, it's time for the final segment of the show, where we answer a question, or questions in this case, because of a fantastic response this week. I sent out the kind of tweet very, very late, but we still got a great response. This is the final segment of the show, where we answer questions submitted by you, the listeners, the F1 radio community. It's time for the questionable queries.
What the hell is happening in the exit on 12? I have no over if I don't push the K1. Do we really think that the tires will last at the end of the race? Because it doesn't feel like it. Do you really want that I keep going? Because it's just absolute.
So, Josh, you said today that we have 2 questions, or 3 questions to deal with, and so please let us start off with the first question and who asks.
Well, we'll go from this one from Sinan, because it's kind of similar to what we kind of talked about last week, but we'll just kind of give our updated thoughts, or kind of a quick recap for anyone who didn't hear. And this one's about the future of Ricciardo. He says, will he stick around at Red Bull against an ever-improving Verstappen? And of course, the team has been more built around Verstappen. We talked about those quotes from last week. So Tom, just your quick thoughts then. Is Ricciardo sticking around at Red Bull? I presume it means from, say, 2019 onwards?
I think Ricciardo wants to go elsewhere anyway, regardless if his teammate was Verstappen, and regardless if the team was building the car around Verstappen. I think he wants a Mercedes or a Ferrari drive. Maybe he believes that's the only way he's going to win a championship. I don't know. You got to look at the Red Bull car now and see how well they're doing. And obviously Verstappen's performance in Mexico was very clear that car was very comfortable. And probably in a league of its own. Maybe, you know, partly that's down to driver, but I think Ricciardo is maybe he's not as fast as Verstappen on a single lap, but I think he's a more complete driver than Verstappen is at this moment in time. So he's a very attractive driver for teams. I don't think he sticks around at Red Bull. I think he probably goes to Ferrari. I think that's what will happen. Yeah. Although Verstappen doesn't want that, although Vettel doesn't want that, I think that's what happens.
Interesting. I mean, I guess, if Vettel doesn't win next year, that's 4 years without a win, championship win for Ferrari. So maybe they'll have to kind of not look elsewhere for another talent, but kind of, get 2 very, very strong drivers. Maybe we'll kind of change the philosophy a bit. We'll have to see on that one. I think he'd fit very well at Mercedes as well, but obviously we kind of already discussed, I think they're going for Ocon. There's also the possibility of McLaren, if Alonso leaves. There's Renault as well. So there could be a few more options that kind of present themselves for Ricciardo, but I'm fully with Tom on that one. I think he will not be sticking around with Red Bull for very much longer. Let's go from this one from Toby, kind of sticking on the theme of kind of, driver market news. He says, thoughts on the rumour considering Sauber, or concerning, I think he means Sauber dropping Wehrlein, just a showcase of talent that means nothing anymore. So obviously he's quite frustrated to think about that decision, or kind of supposed decision. Basically, the rumour, for anyone who doesn't know, is that Sauber are going with Leclerc and Ericsson for next year. Wehrlein will be dropped, and Giovinazzi will miss out on that seat. So Tom, your thoughts on that one, dropping Wehrlein?
I think that Wehrlein, he is a talented driver, but he's not in the top 10 probably drivers on the grid. Personally, I think he's good. I don't think he's up there with the best, and I don't think he had his time to shine, and he really missed it. And maybe that was unfortunately because Force India chose Ocon over him, but then he's partly to blame for that, because a lot of the rumours were that Force India didn't want to work with a character like Wehrlein, who maybe sometimes is a little bit pushy or arrogant or whatever. I don't know. I'm just saying what I hear, but I understand where Toby's coming from. Wehrlein he's better than, say, Ericsson, okay? But we all know with the Sauber situation that Ericsson he knows people. I think the owners sponsor him, right? So you'd be a fool to think that they're going to keep Wehrlein over Ericsson, I think, anyway. Obviously, if we're just basing it on talent, then of course you'd have Wehrlein instead, but that's not the way the business works, in my opinion. And I think talent isn't everything in F1. It really isn't. It is about making the right decisions. It's about working with people. Just like in any job, you've got to be able to work with people. And I think Wehrlein is a prime example where maybe if he was a little bit more, not nice, but you know what I mean. Maybe his fortunes would have been better. I don't know, Josh. Do you sort of think the same way as me, or is
I think it's a bit of harsh treatment really by the media and kind of fans in general, just because of these kind of few rumours. I mean, there's got to be, of course, no smoke without fire is kind of one phrase that springs to mind. But I think people have been a little harsh on him. But if you look at some of his results, he's always kind of thereabouts, and he kind of gets those big results when someone like Ericsson doesn't. His 8th in Spain was mighty impressive. He picked up a point in Baku this year and picked up a point in Amana last year, of course, in Austria. The flashes of speed are definitely there. He's a DTM champion, and to do that in I think it was only like his 3rd year was pretty mighty impressive. So he is a big talent. If he doesn't have a big future in Formula 1, he'll have a big future elsewhere. We'll have to see where that future might be. I mean, even Williams is not, a possibility that we can rule out just yet. He does seem to be in contention for that seat, so we could possibly even see him there. We'll have to see how this one goes. But for me, it is a shame that Wehrlein's not in, if he isn't in Formula 1 next year. Bit of a shame for Giovinazzi as well, but Marcus Ericsson getting this wants to be his 4th season in Formula 1. I don't think many people... 5th is it? Got 2014, 15, 16. Yeah, 5th season in Formula 1. I would have not predicted that when he was trundling around in a caterer and being kind of walloped by Kobayashi week in, week out. So he's been probably one of the most kind of improved drivers, but still, like you say, I think not the best option for Sauber, but looking like the one they've gone with.
Yeah. So the final question is from William, and this is relating to Hamilton. He says, is Hamilton driving better now that Rosberg isn't snapping at his heels? Does this suggest Hamilton wants a number 1 role in the team? So, Josh, what do you make of this?
Well, I think every top driver really wants the number one role in the team, right? They want to have a team built around them, no matter what kind of sound bites they'll give to the media saying, I'll face anyone or whatever. Every top driver wants to have a team built around them. They want things all their own way. They want a fairly easy teammate to beat. They want to just win championships, no matter what cost. Of course, Hamilton's driving better. I think now Rosberg isn't snapping at his heels. I think that's a major, major part. Now Rosberg's gone, the atmospheres and the mood in Mercedes is so much better for Hamilton. He was a big problem and really got to him, I think, during 2016. It really was a kind of psychiatric, is that right? Mental battle last year. So yes, Hamilton wants a number one role in the team for sure, just like Vettel, just like Alonso, just like probably Max Verstappen as well. So yes, Hamilton's driving much better now. And he's in a very, very good place in 2018. That will continue into 2018. 2019 could be a different matter with a different driver possibly in that car. But for now, Hamilton is in fine form. And Rosberg leaving, I think, played a major role in that.
I couldn't put it better myself. Well, we have reached the end of today's episode. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and petrol heads all around the world. I thank Josh for co-hosting the show with me today. I thank you, the listeners. It's people like you and I that keep the racing spirit alive in this crazy world of Formula One. So we cannot thank you enough for supporting the show. Please like, subscribe, rate, review, and share this episode across the various platforms that host F1 Radio, including iTunes, YouTube, and TuneIn if you like what you hear. Until next time, it's been a pleasure to serve.